The moment she walked in, it was as if a light bulb turned on and the sun shone down on her. At 74, Richard Gere, who once captivated millions through Pretty Woman and American Gigolo, wasn't talking about a role, a movie, or an achievement. He was simply talking about a woman. A humble confession that made the world stop in its tracks for a moment. If Richard Gere's love story touched you, don't forget to leave comment number 1 to share your thoughts. I didn't divorce because they were wrong. I divorced because I wasn't good enough to keep them. A man who had been married 3 times, once praised as the most charming gentleman in Hollywood, finally realized that love isn't about finding the right person, but about becoming the right person at the right time. He had loved some of the most beautiful women on the planet, married one of the world's top supermodels, and was adored by both cinema and the media. But it wasn't until he was nearly 70 years old that he found a relationship that didn't need to be clung to. A love that didn't require performance. And a woman who didn't come to change him, but to stay. And Richard Gere said, "She is the true love of my life." This is not just the emotional journey of a movie star. It's the journey of a man from the spotlight to solitude, from insecurity to tranquility, from control to understanding. It's a journey of learning how to love, not by instinct, but through maturity. Before becoming a romantic icon on the silver screen, Richard Gere was a skinny guy from Pennsylvania, playing the trumpet, composing music for school plays, and studying philosophy at the University of Massachusetts. But then, he left it all behind to pursue the stage, where he could become someone else, live a different life. And perhaps, from an early age, Richard Gere became accustomed to playing the role of the charming man, not just on screen, but in real life as well. With his striking looks and enigmatic, reserved demeanor, he was never short of women. But just as he always avoided definitions, Richard's early relationships came and went quickly, intense enough to be captivating, but never long enough to hold on. From Carol Mallory, the bold model who described him as a gem gliding across the sky, to Dawn Steele, the editor at Penthouse who later became the first female leader of a major film studio in the U.S. From Penelope Milford, his co-star in Days of Heaven, who stood by his side throughout the 70s, to his brief but profound relationship with Sylvia Martins, the woman who took him to Nepal, introduced him to Tibetan lamas, and opened the door to meditation and Buddhism. They were all beautiful, intelligent, bold women. But for Richard Gere at the time, love was merely a fleeting chapter in his journey of self-discovery. He was rising with Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Days of Heaven, and American Gigolo. Yet at the same time, he was lost in a void where no one had taught him how to make a woman stay. The whispers at parties, the flashbulbs of paparazzi, the lonely nights in hotels after shooting. Everything blended together, creating a picture of Richard Gere as dazzling on the outside but empty within. Perhaps that's why he never truly sought stability. The women came and went, continuing to drift away, because even he didn't know what he needed. Not deep enough to keep them, not secure enough to trust. All he knew was that he was living fast and wasn't ready to stop. In 1988, at a BBQ party hosted by photographer Herb Ritz in Beverly Hills, 39-year-old Richard Gere met 22-year-old Cindy Crawford, a girl who had just appeared on the covers of the world's top fashion magazines. They came from two different worlds. He was an actor, once dubbed the most handsome man alive, while she was a rising star in the booming fashion industry. And then they fell in love, quickly, deeply, and unexpectedly. Before long, they moved in together in New York. The world was stunned. A couple too beautiful, too famous. Richard Gere, the calm, elegant gentleman. Cindy Crawford, the American beauty icon. They were everywhere. Red carpets, advertisements, magazine covers, becoming the iconic couple of the 90s. But behind the spotlight, there were two people moving to very different rhythms. Cindy was still searching for herself. A young woman who had grown up too quickly in the glamorous world, uncertain of the boundary between her true self and the public image. She rushed from photo shoots to promotional events, striving to maintain her figure, trying to please those who wanted to turn her into a living brand. Meanwhile, Richard, after 2 decades as Hollywood's dream man, was beginning to grow tired of the crowds. He sought peace, dedicating time to meditation, engaging in humanitarian work, and retreating into quiet spaces far from the cameras. They got married in a very quiet moment, an impromptu wedding in Las Vegas in 1991, with a foil-wrapped ring, no guests, no media, just the two of them trying to hold on to something beautiful that was already slipping away. But marriage wasn't the cure for the growing distance. While Richard meditated, Cindy was boarding flights. When he sat still in silence, she kept moving, trying to become the woman he needed. She once said, "I tried to become the woman he needed, and then I lost myself." No scandal, no betrayal, just an ever-growing silence, and two people living like roommates, their schedules no longer in sync, their emotions no longer meeting. In 1995, they quietly divorced. No lawsuits, no bitter words. The media had nothing to write about, except for one lingering question. Why did the perfect couple break up? If you want to know the rest of the story, leave a comment with the number 2. Nearly 3 decades later, Richard finally said something, short but enough. "I loved a woman who didn't know who she was, and I thought love could help her find stability. But that was an unfair expectation. No one was wrong. We just didn't meet at the right time in our life journeys." One was still flying, the other had landed. After his divorce from Cindy Crawford, Richard Gere steered clear of high-profile relationships. No longer gracing magazine covers with young supermodels, he quietly retreated, meditated, traveled across Asia, studied Tibetan Buddhism, and took on deeper, more introspective roles. Then, like a gentle transition after emotional turmoil, he met Carey Lowell, an actress known for her role as a Bond girl in License to Kill. A beautiful, experienced, and calm woman. No glitz, no frenzy. Carey appeared like a peaceful harbor, which Richard at the time mistook for his final destination. They began dating in 1995, living quietly together, and in 2000, their son, Homer James Jigme, was born. This was Richard's first experience as a father at the age of 51. In 2002, they married in a private ceremony. No paparazzi, no red carpets, no media frenzy, just a small family choosing to live in Pound Ridge, New York, away from the spotlight. Carey spent most of her time as a mother, while Richard cultivated vegetables, read books, selectively chose films, and continued his humanitarian work. But sometimes, stability is just an illusion created by parallel patience. Beneath the calm exterior, the two people slowly drift apart. Richard became extremely introverted. He spent hours meditating, attending retreats in Tibet or Nepal, and immersing himself in the philosophy of letting go and finding stillness. Meanwhile, Carey, though no longer frequently in front of the camera, still craved connection, movement, and social space to feel alive. As time passed, they increasingly appeared less together. At ceremonies and film events, one would attend while the other was absent, their schedules no longer in sync. No one spoke it out loud, but the silence began to speak for itself. In 2013, Carey Lowell officially filed for divorce after 11 years of marriage and 18 years together. The reason cited was irreconcilable differences. But close insiders revealed a deeper truth. Carey felt shut out from her husband's world. She lived in a house but couldn't hold the key to its soul. Meanwhile, Richard still believed that silence was a sign of peace. It was only when everything fell apart that he realized, when silence lasts too long, it's no longer peace. It's a signal, and I didn't hear it. The divorce, which took 3 years, wasn't caused by emotional conflicts, but by financial issues. With assets worth over $45 million and properties in various locations, the divorce led to numerous court sessions. But amid the tension, they managed to do one thing right. They agreed to share custody of their son, Homer, a sensitive and calm boy, much like his father. Richard didn't say anything after the divorce, nor did Carey. All that remained was a quiet, deep feeling of something that had shattered. No one betrayed anyone. No one lost their way. Simply put, they were two people who were too honest with their true selves, and at some point they could no longer reach each other. After Carey Lowell, Richard Gere nearly vanished from the media. No award shows, no red carpet photos, no interviews. People assumed he had chosen to live the remainder of his life in quietude, being a father, meditating, a contemplative soul. But then, just when he stopped searching, true love appeared. But then, just as he stopped searching, true love arrived. In 2014, while his divorce from Carey Lowell was still not finalized, Richard Gere unexpectedly appeared with a new face, Padma Lakshmi, the model, author, and host of Top Chef. It was a relationship that piqued the media's curiosity, but never became the focal point. No hand-holding photos, no interviews confirming their romance, just scattered rumors that Richard and Padma met at a charity event, spoke for hours backstage, and were occasionally spotted dining together. At that time, both of them carried their own scars. Richard was ending an 18-year marriage, while Padma had just endured the heartbreak of parting ways with billionaire Ted Forstmann, the father figure to her young daughter. They found in each other a deep understanding rather than passion. It's said that during those few months, Richard found quiet joy in Padma, long conversations, simple dinners, and the comfort of being together without needing to play any roles. But at the same time, both understood that they were at very different points in their lives. Richard craved quiet, meditation, and peace. Padma, famous and full of life, was swept up in the energy of television and international events. They parted ways after about 6 months with a gentle ending. No regrets, no arguments, no scandals. A close source simply said, "They decided to be friends because their lives were too busy and heading in different directions." If anything lingered from this brief relationship, it was the image of a Richard Gere who began to slow down. No longer loving out of loneliness, no longer seeking to fill a void, he learned to accept that harmony cannot be forced, and sometimes love alone is not enough to make someone stay. And perhaps from that very place, the urge to search quietly faded. Richard Gere began to let go of all expectations, not seeking love, not waiting for a miracle. It was in that exact moment that the final person stepped into his life, without noise, without pressure, without needing to be held on to. Alejandra Silva. People often say, "When you stop searching for love, love will find you." Richard Gere, after 3 marriages, a series of magnetic but fleeting relationships, and years wandering between monasteries and film sets, finally sat still. No chasing, no effort to prove anything. And in that very moment, Alejandra Silva entered his life. Not as dazzling as Cindy Crawford, nor as seasoned on stage as Carey Lowell, Alejandra Silva, a Spanish woman with calm eyes, soft blonde hair, and the sensitive heart of a social activist, never thought she would fall in love again. She had just gone through a divorce, was raising her child alone, and was leading the Rice Foundation to combat homelessness in Madrid. She had slept on the streets to understand the pain of those without shelter, and once shared, "I don't do charity work to be seen. I do it because if I can't give my whole self to it, I'd rather not do it at all." In 2014, at a hotel owned by her family in Positano, Italy, they met again. At the time, Richard was quietly stepping out of his second marriage. She, too, was buried in divorce papers, weary. But when they looked at each other, they didn't see the past. They saw a peaceful version of the future they could build together. Richard Gere took the first step, quietly, gently. He sent flowers every day, wrote short songs, penned handwritten letters, not to conquer her, but as a whisper. "I'm ready to stay if you need someone by your side." Alejandra initially declined. She was wary of the 33-year age gap. She knew he was a global star. She didn't want to be the next woman of Richard Gere. But he didn't give up. He didn't persuade. He waited. He was simply there, quiet, patient enough for her to see. This wasn't another romance. This was a home. They married in April 2018 in an intimate Buddhist ceremony in New York. Alejandra converted beforehand, not because Richard asked, but because she found herself in the beliefs he held. She said, "I didn't ignore the age difference, but when the karmic energy between two people is strong enough, differences become secondary." And later, she shared with Hola, "Meeting Richard Gere was like someone reaching out, pulling me out of the dark and showing me the way. I was lost. He was the light." After the wedding, they moved to a peaceful estate in Pound Ridge, where Richard had once lived with Carey Lowell. But this time, he didn't build walls. They left the doors open. They lived together as companions, with no control, no expectations, no roles to perform. In 2019, they welcomed their first son, Alexander. In 2020, their second child was born, the name kept private, but the joy was not. On Instagram, Alejandra often shared glimpses of family life, walks, meditation sessions, or their two children reaching out to catch the autumn sun. Richard Gere once said of his wife, "She's the funniest, smartest, most sensitive, bravest woman who knows what she wants. I don't need her to be anyone else, and I don't need to play the perfect husband. We live close without needing to explain." Alejandra called him the kindest man I've ever met. He is not only a thoughtful partner, writing music for her each morning and still sending flowers even after marriage, but also a peaceful father, holding his children as they fall asleep, always putting family first. People often ask, how do you keep love alive? The answer, Richard Gere doesn't hold on. Alejandra doesn't hold on. They walk side by side without control. They touch each other with understanding, not with expectation. They respect their differences but don't force themselves to become the same. One is deeply introverted, drawn to silence and meditation. The other is outwardly engaged, fighting for human rights and the homeless. They met not because they were alike, but because they shared the same deep rhythm in their hearts. This is not the passion of youth. This is the love of two people who have been broken but never lost their capacity to love. A man who had divorced 3 times, a woman who had walked through the wreckage of a marriage, and in the end, both understood. Love isn't about holding on to someone. It's about never making them feel they have to try to stay. In a rare moment when speaking about his wife, Richard once said, "She is the most generous woman I've ever known, with others and with me." A simple sentence, but enough to explain why he never had to look any further. Some relationships are built on passion. Some are held together by commitment. And then there are relationships like that of Richard Gere and Alejandra Silva, formed not out of lack, not to fill a void, but because both were already whole. Neither came with the mindset of searching. Neither hoped the other would fix, complete, or become an idealized version. She didn't need Richard to be romantic like in the movies, and Richard didn't need her to resemble any woman he had known before. They met with nothing left to prove and no one left to hold on to. No media contracts, no pressure to appear in public, no need to showcase wedding photos. Just short songs Richard wrote each morning, handwritten letters Alejandra kept, and peaceful dinners where the laughter of their children drowned out the noise of everyday life. People often say, if you want to keep someone, never let them feel like they have to try too hard to stay. And perhaps Richard Gere took many years to understand that. Meanwhile, Alejandra, after the heart-wrenching pain of a divorce, also realized that love isn't something that makes you lose yourself. True love is where you can be your truest self. They don't try to control each other. No need to track schedules, no need to justify feelings. They just show up. They are present and live together with complete understanding, like two people who have walked through all the pain and finally found a place quiet enough for something to bloom. Richard Gere was once the face that lit up every screen. Now, he is a man living in a house with no reporters waiting at the gate. At 74, he no longer appears regularly in the press, doesn't walk red carpets, or answers recycled interview questions. No one knows what film he's working on, because perhaps he isn't. Or if he is, it's likely a quiet, independent project, one that doesn't need box office success or Oscars. Instead of camera lenses, he now spends his time with Alejandra and their 2 young sons at a farmhouse in Pound Ridge, where the grass grows past the knees and morning fog cloaks the hills. A day in his life looks like this: making tea or coffee for his wife, not calling an assistant, walking the dog along the stone path behind the house, no paparazzi, gardening, reading Buddhist texts, playing piano for the kids in the evening, and sometimes driving them to school in an old SUV, no bodyguards. There are no more scenes to shoot. Each day is real. He still maintains close ties with humanitarian organizations, especially those focused on Tibet, human rights, and homelessness. But now he does it all in silence. No speeches, no live streams, no awards. Alejandra, his wife, continues to run the Rice Foundation in Spain. They don't do charity for applause. They do it because it's the right thing. And with their family, every moment is kept private. A photo of a walk through the autumn woods. A Christmas snapshot captioned simply, "From our home to yours, wishing you peace." Richard Gere once said, "I don't need to be in Hollywood to know I still exist." Perhaps that's why he never formally announced his retirement. He just quietly stepped back, completely. No more acting, no more roles, just living in the gentlest way. Richard Gere was once famous for playing charming, magnetic men, but now he plays only one role, perhaps the most important of his life: being a father, a husband, and a peaceful man. Which love story from Richard Gere's life resonates with you the most? Was it the dazzling marriage with Cindy Crawford, the prolonged silence with Carey Lowell, or the quiet but radiant life with Alejandra Silva? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever believed that love always arrives late, leave a comment saying, "Yes, I think so," to let us know you believe in Richard Gere's love story too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories about the life journeys of your favorite stars.